Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this panel. I'm Kati Chitrakorn, Retail and Marketing Editor at Vogue Business, and I will be moderating today's discussion on how brands should approach digital acceleration. As part of this discussion, we will explore how brands can adapt their business models to be more digital in a world during and post-COVID-19. So I'm delighted today to be joined by two industry experts. The first is Anne-Christine Polet, Senior Vice President of Digital Ventures at PVH. And we're also joined by Maria Morais, Global Industry Principal of Global Consumer Industries at SAP, a management software firm. So the fashion industry is highly impacted by global economic uncertainty, as well as trends, industrial changes. And over the past few months, as the coronavirus became a global pandemic, businesses have had to pivot to remote working, to e-commerce. We're also seeing a vast majority of consumers use digital channels like before, during, and after making their purchases. And what all of that means is that being a digitally savvy brand or business can no longer be considered as a separate thing. It's crucial to everybody. So I thought we could begin the conversation by talking about what we mean when we say digital acceleration. Like when you think about digitization in fashion, like what does that mean to you, and how do you see the industry changing? And this could be a question for maybe you could start, Maria.
Sure, happy to. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's a great question. And of course, the parameters in which organizations are operating now changed within the last few months, as you mentioned. But whilst this is happening, what we are seeing is 3D runway shows. We're seeing more utilization of digital and many direct-to-consumer initiatives. What I would like to start with is to say that what I'm observing in terms of investments is that the majority of the digitalization in fashion at the moment is happening in the B2B space and outside the scope of the things that we may hear more often. So I think that's an interesting thing that it's happening.
How do you see the industry changing right now, Anne-Christine? And what does kind of like digitization in like the fashion world look like for you right now?
Right. For me, I must agree completely with Maria. I think historically, a lot of fashion brands have focused their investment a lot on the consumer-facing areas of digital. And what you're seeing now is an increased necessity to look at that entire value chain, from the moment that a garment is created all the way to sold in B2B and then sold to our consumers. And I think that's what you're seeing now in an accelerated pace, is where a lot of the investment is and focus is hopefully also going to the digitization of that value chain for fashion.
So new standards we're seeing of service and experience are being set in retail, and you want to be a brand that considers its entire experience ecosystem. But I'm also seeing that several brands are still trying to figure out how to effectively bridge this digital divide. Like I thought, Maria, you work with a breadth of retailers of varying sizes at SAP. How can brands approach affecting digital transformation or acceleration even now at this stage across its entire organization and culture?
Yeah, that's such a big question, and a question that the industry has been trying to answer for the last 10 years at least. But I always find that it's an important question. So, I mean, at SAP, we think that there are three main factors of success when fashion retailers are aiming to digitalize their organizations. I mean, focus on the customer is fundamental, because that is what will drive the digital journey. So our research demonstrates that there are key moments in the buying journey that needs to improve. So for example, 81% of customers expect personalized offers in context. So we are completely aware that it's not just enough to know the name of the customer and make some product recommendations. You need to go beyond that and understand the context in which the consumer is in. And another stat, just out of curiosity, 73% of customers like the convenience of pickup in-store models. So click and collect is really important in fashion. But this is just one of the points for success. Other topics would include the culture of collaboration and innovation. This is really important, and a way for us at SAP to do that is through our ventures with startups. We have SAP IO Foundry, precisely to discover new talents out there in terms of technology and then embed that in our offerings. But we see that many fashion retailers also have that culture, and that is that is very important. We think that's a very good best practice. And then finally, I think it's important to take risks and think differently. Just not try to copy what others are doing. There are so many opportunities to innovate these days that what we really want is to see that unique voice from every company out there, and definitely fashion is in a good position to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, what are you seeing, Christine? How far along is your transformation at PVH? And also, I think people would be interested to know, like, how do you set priorities and decide which opportunities to pursue?
Yeah. The digital transformation at PVH started 5 years ago. Our now outgoing CEO had this vision of a digital value chain. And we started in a very interesting place because we started almost like halfway. We started in wholesale sales. So there was a big realization that the area where 60-70% of our revenue comes from is still conducted in such a analog, inefficient way, with sample sets being shipped over to all kinds of showrooms, and it just didn't work in an age where digital was everywhere. So that was the first step on the journey, building a digital showroom and rolling that out across our entire showroom infrastructure. And that was both for Tommy Hilfiger as well as for Calvin Klein. And from there, we realized, okay, this is bringing us so much value. We can do our job so much better. Our sales teams are better empowered, better enabled, but we're also reducing waste in that value chain. We're reducing samples. We're speeding up. What else can we tackle? And it actually went both ways from there. We went towards the consumer part, seeing what could be digitized there, but we also went to the heart of the company, and that's product creation. And that was around 3 years ago when we made our first investments in digital creation and 3D design. And I think the aspect of culture, what Maria also says, is incredibly important, because digital products or digital tools are not a success if you don't have people that are actually using it. So the mantra has always very much been, you need to build or procure products that really add value to the people using it, but you also need to focus on the people that have to go through change and guide them through that change curve as seamlessly as possible, because it is a transformation, and without considering the humans and the human element of that, digital transformation is nothing. So that was a big thing for us. And PVH actually took it one step further, because we believe that the entire industry has to move in this direction. And the digital products that we've built and the success that we've had there is something that we actually want to share with the industry. So we have 2 startups that are actually now in the process of spinning off, that are focused on these pieces of the value chain that we're offering to the industry right now. So it went from an internal project to something that we're also now hoping to scale industry-wide.
No, that's so interesting about what you're saying, how everyone should be moving in this direction. And definitely when technology has shown that it can help brands maximize value and minimizing waste. And I would definitely love to come back to that. But what do you think has been some of the biggest challenges, I suppose, for fashion brands specifically when it comes to accelerating their businesses digitally? Like, we talked about this ahead of time, and we were saying how the fact that digital transformation, like that ship has sailed, everyone should be doing it now, they should be accelerating their businesses, but what's stopping people from doing so?
I really think it takes just a little bit of courage. Digital transformation or digital acceleration is not a Band-Aid you put on something, or a nice little layer that you put on top. It really means change, and it means putting a lot of work and potentially a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into making this a success. So it requires commitment across the organization to be able to do these things. And when you do them, you also need to make sure that you show that success early on. Otherwise, you set up to fail. I'd be curious, Maria, to hear what you see.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think what you're describing reveals that you are a mature organization when it comes to digital, and that is really good to see. What tends to be the challenge normally is the prioritization. There are so many opportunities to develop new things and so many new shining tools out there. How do you prioritize what's important? And that what stops sometimes people from adopting new ways of working or new innovations is that people have different agendas, right? And it's that common shared vision that Anne-Christine was describing is so key. But how do you do that? Do you do that top down, bottom up? How do you do that in a matrix organization? I mean, so many different questions here. I think when I see a company that has the business and IT working together, then there's a huge possibility that that project will be successful. When that is not the case, when there is perhaps an IT that it's more in a position of defining what the business wants and then translates that, not really co-creating together, we tend to see that there are more challenges than in other organizations. That's why the innovation spirit is so important. But it's not, it's not just adopting agile without plans and, let's see what happens, right? There are tools out there and a lot of people with experience in the market. It's just a question of trusting and have courage, as Anne-Christine was saying. I mean, it's not an easy road, but so many have accomplished that successfully. So nothing is stopping other companies from doing the same.
Absolutely.
And I would add is, don't forget that it requires approaches across all those layers. So you need to make sure that you focus on that end user, the person that is going through the change or using a digital tool, but you need that top management ambassadorship and evangelism also to push people and challenge people even more in the right direction. So it's really about considering the angles that you have across all those layers in the organization.
Definitely. And like I know you both have a lot of thoughts on how brands should move away from the traditional way of creating and selling garments. And this is where technology comes in. What would you say are the biggest opportunities out there now for fashion brands to kind of reinvent the value chain with technology?
This is my favorite topic and I'm the most passionate about it. I really think that the value chain that fashion holds, it's long overdue that needs some reinvention and reconsideration. I think the way that collections are created and sold across the world right now is a process that is literally hanging on by duct tape at times and conducted in Excel files and phone calls. So it really, for me, it feels like a platform that is just cracking at the seams. And I think the potential of initiatives like digital design, allowing designers to create in 3D, immediately see what they have in their heads, but also leverage assets like that all through your value chain into digital selling, into the consumer-facing space, that is incredibly exciting. And I think that will have such an impact on the industry from an efficiency point of view, but also from things like waste reduction. If you don't need sample sets and you don't need to photograph all of that, that would be an amazing thing and would allow companies to speed up so much. So I really think that, focus and emphasis on that value chain digitization is critical at the moment.
Yeah.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's really interesting that you kind of mentioned kind of 3D design and manufacturing as well, because I think kind of all the shutdowns due to COVID-19 have really forced brands to consider how much of their workflow could become digital, and that's really brought 3D design and manufacturing even more to the forefront. I'm interested to know how this is actually being implemented at PVH, because I understand, for example, like Tommy Hilfiger, one of your brands, will use 3D design to create, develop, and sell samples from its spring 2022 collections.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where our corporate startup called Stitch comes in. So Stitch's ambition is to allow PVH, so Tommy and Calvin Klein, to scale 3D across all of its apparel categories by the end of the year. And to do that, we're actually tackling it in two ways. So Stitch builds products that allow our designers to complete a digital workflow end to end, and designers, but also our product developers. So it encompasses all the people that have to be involved to create a collection, and allow them to create those collections digitally as seamlessly as possible, to do their revisions, to do their reviews, all of that in a digital workflow. But at the same time, and that's that human element of change, Stitch's focus is on upskilling that design and product community to be able to do this. So training them, taking them through transformation. We have a team called Stitch Academy that in just a couple weeks' time created an entire library of online videos and trainings to help our design communities tackle these different elements that come with learning how to design in 3D. And the sole purpose of this is really bringing that craft back into design, where that design process can be very fragmented and manual. Now in a digital workflow, you see that more and more it really becomes about the product and whatever is in your head, and how do you get that into a beautiful visual that other people can give feedback on, or that our factories can start working from. So that's the approach that Stitch takes. And the aim is by the end of this year for Tommy to have all of that in 3D and be able then to use that in our digital showrooms and sell to our customers worldwide using 3D collections.
I think that's really incredible. And Maria, I'm so sorry to interrupt you just now. I mean, I would also love, to know your thoughts on like the opportunities you see in, brands using technology to reinvent their value chain. What are you seeing from your end of things?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the example that Anne-Christine described is something that we've seen on a very small tier of our customers trying to develop this type of initiatives. 3D is definitely coming to disrupt the value chain, but the main category we see is really a description of new business models related with circular economy. So everything that is related with extension of life cycle of the product, for example, being able to bring a product back into for renting use cases, or for e-commerce use cases, or for recycling even. It's not possible to recycle a product if you don't know what that product is made of. And with washes, even if brands are very good at putting there, this is made of 30% cotton and the rest is polyester. What type of cotton, what type of polyester? I mean, we need digitalization to understand and to read across the value chain. So, I mean, the quest, and to be really brief here, the quest is that until now, digital transformation was all about breaking silos within the organization, and the game just became different. Now it's not about that. Now it's about breaking silos within you and your competitors and other people from other industries that are important in the entire ecosystem. So, of course, for a company like SAP, this is exciting because it's a level of complexity that didn't exist before, and it really keeps us very much, it is important for us to be in contact with our customers constantly and really understand, because they are helping us to develop our own software, right? And, ideas like what Anne-Christine was saying, if I go to a meeting and I hear that, immediately I'm speaking with my product teams and say, hey guys, I just heard this at PVH. I mean, how do we bring this to our own products, or how can we use the startup that they have and use it as a plugin in our marketplace, in our ecosystem? So I think it's really fascinating. I've been involved in a few samples, selling scenarios, so using 3D as a way to avoid having to produce one-of-a-kind pieces for beginning of collections. The reduction in terms of total cost of ownership, and it's huge. There are brands seeing reductions of around 40% of the amount that they have to invest at the beginning of collection with samples, and not to count the CO2 emissions that happen when you transport them everywhere. So another initiative, I think it's interesting to see what brands are doing on.
Definitely, because that leads nicely into my next question, because it's interesting to talk about kind of waste and the kind of reduction of these things. And in addition, technologies like also made to order manufacturing, digital showrooms, like all these technologies help to reduce a brand's environmental footprint. Like how far away are we from these approaches becoming mainstream, like truly mainstream in the sense that everybody's adopting this kind of approach? Like what are your thoughts?
We care a lot about reducing that environmental footprint, and one of the ways that PVH has aimed to do that always is by reducing the dependency on samples. And over the past 5 years, as they have digitized their showrooms, that sample dependency has decreased by almost half. And I think that that is a tremendous impact. And that is also where the second startup comes in. So we have a second startup called Hatch. And Hatch is now taking that digital showroom software and that experience in transforming sales teams and bringing that out into the market with the sole mission of helping other brands be able to reduce their dependencies on samples as well. And I imagine if we as a whole industry could all reduce our sample dependency at least by half, the impact that that has on supply chains, one, but on the environment and reducing the need to have to produce all of those samples that ideally get sold in a sample sale, but we don't know really where else they end up. That potential is huge. So that's something that we're very passionate about. And I think by digitizing those wholesale processes, the fashion industry can make a really good step towards a better environment and a better world.
So to conclude today's conversation, I think in today's changing world, what does a brand that has successfully digitally accelerated its business look like to you? And do you personally feel that you've achieved what you've set out to achieve so far?
I can give some KPIs that we use as a rule of thumb, but this is a complex question because it depends on a variety of things. And if you think about big groups, big brands that have so many different ways of going to market, it's really not just this. But if we look at them at trading online as a rule of thumb for digitalization, being that trading B2B or B2C. But if we talk about B2C, the minimum would be 20% of sales performed online. And out of those, having around 40% mobile transactions. If that happens, we see that normally there's around 4% e-commerce conversion rate. So in the B2C world, this would be some KPIs that would give us an indication that that brand achieves a good level of maturity. What we are seeing normally is that this level of maturity first achieved with B2C helps with B2B use cases. Normally the brands that have somehow directly to consumer sold during a period of time gain some experience internally, and then it's easier to digitalize B2B. It doesn't mean that in some cases people don't start by digitalizing B2B and then go to B2C, but what I see more often is that as you get more experience and the maturity level in B2C, then it's easier to digitalize the rest of the organization. And so these are the KPIs that normally we use as rule of thumb.
I think it's such an interesting question too, because I think a digital journey is actually never finished. And how do you know when you have a digital organization? I think in the end, it's really, are you flexible? Are you able to adapt to change? Are you able to leverage technology to solve the core problems of your business, to have a business that that reduces waste with everything they do instead of creating waste? And I think that is really both a mindset shift. It's an understanding that of the kind of talent that you need in organizations to be able to leverage this. And yeah, like Maria also said, it's courage, to be able to do this, because it is not an easy thing. So yeah, the future of fashion, or the future of digital, and how you know where you're there. Yeah, I just think you're never done.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the key for brands is kind of to find the right balance between having provoking fast results and innovative ideas, but also having a solid ground for that digital acceleration you were talking about. So I guess to conclude, for everyone who's listening today, what would you like for them to take away from this conversation?
Collaborate more.
Yeah, Maria, please. Maria,
sorry.
Please.
Just 3 words from my side: collaboration, innovation, and build yourself to the best version you can possibly be. That will take you there individually, each individual in the organization. Yeah. If everyone does that, we can get a lot done. Sorry, Anne.
Absolutely. And to go for it, you know, to take the leap, because you can stay in PowerPoint forever and talk about it forever, but sometimes you just got to do it and start small, but keep like this big goal in mind, but start super small and start super tangible, but just start doing it, because from those learnings, you will get traction and you will see the potential that it has for you. And I think that is really key. And not forget that you might have a lot of hidden talents in your organization that is incredibly enthusiastic about these kind of things, especially as you talk about younger employees in organizations that are just like thirsty for these kind of initiatives.
Thank you, Maria and Christine, for all of your insights. And we'll move on to Q&As now, because we had quite a few from the audience come in. So we've picked a few. And the first one is, do you see a time where we can have an avatar that moves from site to site? Is the industry ready for collaborations like this? What are your thoughts, Maria?
I've seen Anifa's virtual 3D fashion show, and so we're not far from reality. I think, though, that technology, although technology can totally do that, having an avatar, I think we still like to see the real models in a fashion show. I'm not sure if the adoption of all of this digitally will be, but definitely there is an opportunity for prototypes. And yeah, I think some people are already starting to try on some of these things, and will be interesting to see what the next fall winter collection will bring. I'm sure a lot of innovations will come.
And the next question is, which omni-channel tools do you think will play a key role in the fashion industry? Which ones are you prioritizing at the moment, Anne-Christine?
At the moment, when it comes to omnichannel and the consumer landscape, the company is very much focused on getting through the crisis for sure. And that is number one. The second thing is that we see that our e-com platforms are obviously, like a lot of other fashion brands, are doing very well. But what we prioritize in the future is whatever brings our consumer convenience, because I think that is what people are looking for, to be able to shop conveniently and effectively across the different channels.
Sure, thank you. And the last one that we'll have time for is a lot of the new omni-channel technologies introduced will be interactive. Do you think customers should communicate with the brands in English, or will they have an opportunity to write a comment in their own language? Maria, I think you had some thoughts on this one.
I think it depends on the brand's ambition to be global and what being global means for the brand. But what I've experienced is, of course, that local languages are important, right? And so different currencies and different tax systems, that's part of the considerations that that global fashion retailers need to consider. Multiple currencies, multiple languages, all of that. I think it is important to have I think it gives the opportunity to be more personalized for that market. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you don't adopt English as the main language for global communication. So it's the blend of both, and really having a matrix that defines a content strategy for the company in the first place, and then for each one of the regions, how do they fall into that main umbrella. Technology can do it, we can do it, it's not a problem. It's really a question of how you as a business want to take it.
Sure, and if there are no further thoughts, that's all we have time for. Thank you again to everyone who tuned to our discussion today, and thank you, Maria and Anne-Christine, for sharing your valuable insights with us. And for anybody else who's watching who would like more information on how brands can accelerate their businesses digitally, there are some links on the screen, including the SAP report, which you can download and read further. Thanks again, everybody, and have a good day.